So I've always loved coffee and kind of was like self-educated in it and would just do pour overs in my house all the time and got more and more and more into it over the years. I chose the route of just going for it, which admittedly was a challenge for me, I think more mentally than the physical component of it.
But you really got to look inward first.
Yeah.
And take responsibility.
Yep. I mean, being uncomfortable and not knowing what is normal for others and stuff, I think is a good place to be in life, you know, and it gives you just a lot of, it's just like, it just opens up your mind, like the obvious. But so we just dug in and did the legwork and like figured it out and definitely messed up a couple times.
My first question is, what did I not give them? What did I not do to support them?
You know, I remember people being like, oh, how'd you do it? And it's just like, I quit my job and bought a ticket.
Welcome everyone to a new episode of the We Grow Together podcast. I'm Laura DiFrancesco and I am so excited to be here with Kyle Horne of Forin Cafe, Wim and Percy as well. He has an incredible story. Him and his partners have started these cafes and wineries and tasting rooms and everything in Philadelphia, creating incredible community, really collaborative, creative brands. So I'm really excited for Kyle to share his story. Do you want to do a little bit of an introduction?
Sure. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm Kyle. I'm one of three partners who started Forin Cafe a few years ago, back in 2021. And yeah, we've grown pretty much since, and we're about to open our, I guess, like fourth location soon this coming spring. So I mean, I'm sure we'll get further in, but yeah.
Yeah, which is absolutely incredible. Can you share more about your background and what established and created this vision of creating Forin?
Sure. So I come primarily from an education background, like secondary ed, high schools. So I was primarily in administration and then taught a little bit, but primarily admin over the years. And then at the end of it all, my boss, myself, and another colleague of mine, the three of us opened up another school. So I worked for a small charter school in Philly, and we opened up another school in North Philadelphia. And so I was one of the co-heads of school of that.
That's amazing.
It was really fun. So I was responsible for everything non-academic internally. So anything from the facility to discipline to athletics to the therapy department, et cetera. So that all rolled up into me. And then my colleague did all the academics and the teachers. And then we had our boss who was more external. So yeah, we opened up a school there, and I did that for the last 2 years with the charter schools, and then worked for a small boutique HR firm in Ballackinwood for a while. That was really nice. I wanted to try the private world. So It was really good to cut my teeth in that sense. And I got a lot of really good experiences through them, and you know, was fortunate enough to be able to travel to New York with like Fortune 500 companies and all that. So it was nice juxtaposition between nonprofit education world and then, you know, a financially driven consulting firm. They did leadership consulting and things of that nature. So there was still a very human component to it. But it was a small growing firm that was doing pretty big things. And that was really great. But I learned it just wasn't for me. That world was just, it wasn't, I kind of was looking to do my own thing. And yeah, in the midst of all of that, met my now business partner. So to answer your question about where Forin came from, I met Seth. So Seth and I both live in Philly, and then we have our friend Will lives outside of New York in Jersey. And so Seth and I are pretty much the boots on the ground and do the majority of things, but Will has been an incredible partner to have. I met Seth through mutual friends, kind of when people were allowed to kind of meet outside during the pandemic. And he, I think, kind of invited me over to his place because probably our other friends were invited, and he probably felt bad not inviting me because I didn't know him. And then he had this nice outdoor deck, so our other friends were like an hour late, and Seth and I just got talking, and he shared that he has worked in hospitality for years, had been laid off due to the pandemic, and wanted to open up his own space and was interested in doing a cafe. So I've always loved coffee and kind of was like self-educated in it and would just do pour overs in my house all the time and got more and more and more into it over the years. And I'd always wanted to do it. And my wife had always kind of, pushed me in that direction, and kind of at that time, a couple of years before that was like, what are you going to do when you're 40? Like, what are you going to be doing? Are you going to be still kind of wishing you would do something, or are you going to be doing it? So that had stuck with me at the time. And then Seth was sharing that he wanted to open up his own spot, and but didn't want to do it alone. And I asked him two things. I said, "You're sharing a lot. Why?" And his response was, "Well, if I don't share it, I won't find my partner, and I'm not concerned with somebody taking my idea." He's like, "Because I know how I'd like to." He's like, at that time, he said, "I know how I'm envisioning it." And then I said, "I'd love to keep talking to you," and we never stopped. And Seth, to give him his credit, had the base framework for Forin, and I think it resonated with both of us and with me as well, because we both had the privilege of living abroad for a couple of years in our 20s. And he was in the Caribbean, the Caymans and Bahamas, and then I lived in Argentina for a while, and mainly Argentina and Colombia. And so like that concept of foreign and the experiences that you learn from it and you gain from it were kind of embedded within both of us. So yeah, we decided to keep going, and we never stopped. So
that's incredible. And I feel like something in entrepreneurship, that spark of an idea, that creativity is so inherent in certain folks. And then that brings like-minded people together. And even though at that point you guys weren't closely connected, it's amazing how shared passion can drive connection in a lot of ways in entrepreneurship.
Agreed.
Which is why I love that, because I feel like sometimes people feel so siloed and disconnected in entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And it's amazing when you can find shared passion, whether that's through a partner or just a colleague or something like that, to be able to go through this journey together and have a shared experience and collaborate in that way.
Yeah. Yeah, well said. I wouldn't do it alone. I have no desire to do it alone, like, let alone the baseline that it's a rare individual who has the entire skill set to do everything.
Absolutely.
And to be able to see everything. And it's just challenging, regardless, even if you do, it's hard. And to have, I've always valued, like, whatever, be it team sports or whatever, I've always valued like teamwork. So to have a partner like Seth's background and Will, to me, is not only comforting, but it's the other side of that, and fun. It's more fun to share.
Yeah.
But it's also, I think, advantageous as well for all of us in the business, because, what one person misses, usually the other one catches. And fortunately, we all have pretty different backgrounds and I think different strengths. So we're able to kind of complement each other really well. So I agree. The connections are the most important part.
Absolutely. And when you're talking about your transition into entrepreneurship, was that one fell swoop, or was that staged over time? I know that transition period looks like different for a lot of people.
Yeah. It's interesting, because I've had a lot of conversations with people about that, and you got to kind of do what's best for you in the moment, right?
Always.
And everything is unique. I chose the route of just going for it, which admittedly was a challenge for me, I think more mentally than the physical component of it. So I quit my job, and my wife and I sold our home in Philly, we moved within Philadelphia, but we actually downsized, which I think we both wanted to downsize. But there was also it was cheaper.
Yeah.
Our mortgage was cheaper, and it's like, look, I'm going to be working in a cafe, and got to be realistic. It's one cafe, and I'm not going to I took a very significant pay cut. So we kind of decided to set ourselves up for, like, how much can we get by on, essentially. Like, just do the math, be smart, and see what the numbers look like. So we made that transition, and we kind of moved around some other things that we'd had, and to just make sure that if I wasn't going to make much money, that we could at least continue on and not worry about losing our home or et cetera, like that. So then I quit my job, and Seth and I built out our first cafe primarily on our own. My dad, fortunately for us, is a carpenter, and I grew up working with him. So I gained a lot of experience with him, and he came down, like he built our bars, we painted the whole space together, like
So cool.
yeah, like I did all the trim work there, and
Nice.
Seth learned a lot of different stuff from my dad. And yeah, we did primarily, I mean, obviously not the plumbing and electrical for the obvious reasons there,
Yeah.
but we did what we could there, which was quite a bit. So for 3 months, we built out our space, and then we opened it, and Seth and I largely worked like every day there. We were open 7 days a week, still are. So yeah.
Oh, that's incredible. I love hearing those types of stories because James and I built out our own spaces. I renovated all of Flourish, did the painting, everything, the plants, and same with James for Wayvine in Nottingham, the farm, building out that, and then Kennett Square. I think it's so cool to dive in with your hands and just build something beyond satisfying. But I think it's also intimidating for people who haven't done that, and you're in a wonderful position to have experience growing up with that. But I'm sure there was so much that you had to dive in and learn throughout the process too that you didn't know. How did you tackle diving into something so big, to some people so overwhelming, without getting caught up in your head and stalling out?
Yeah. It's a good question. I think for us, I think it goes back to the strengths of the team. So Seth had opened, his background, as I mentioned, was in hospitality. So he'd opened up, used to run some small like boutique resorts, and then also was a opening GM for bars and restaurants in the Kimpton Hotel. So they would kind of place him in different spots. So Seth had familiarity and experience with opening spaces in terms of the operational components, et cetera. Will comes from a hotel and management background, in like large scale apartment properties, et cetera. So he also just had like a lot of, Will and I collaborate on like a lot of legal and financial kind of components. And I think with the schools that I worked in, fortunately, like with my background, and the schools were small. So like when we did the build out there, like my boss, Dave, and I were working directly with all the GCs and doing all of that. And with my dad, like I'd worked on permitting and things of that nature, because it's like a small operation. It's just him and at different times a couple guys or whatever. So, and then my wife and I had gutted and renovated a couple homes. So I was familiar with L&I, licensing inspection in Philadelphia and all that. So it was like, of course there's parts you don't know, and then you start getting into things, especially in Philly and probably a lot of other counties where no one really knows what to do.
Oh, absolutely. On the legal side, I can attest to this.
Yeah. And you know, you start to realize along the way that, okay, the path that I took was at least, all right, well, I'm going to do the best I can and try my hardest, and then, you know when to just say like, I'm sorry, and what can I do to correct this? And I felt with good intention, if you look at, you're just being logical, there's a lot of businesses in Philly and not everyone is doing things the right way, which is like, it's sometimes intentional, sometimes not. I was like, all right, if this city's moving along, like we just got to move forward. So Seth and I we did everything together for the first one. Like we kind of did it all together, but then me and Will, because we didn't have enough money to hire a lawyer beyond like operational agreements and, the necessary, like reviewing the lease. But so we just dug in and did the legwork and like figured it out, and definitely messed up a couple times. But, the L&I guy comes in, and you're a small fish when they're building, 20 apartment complexes in Fishtown. And anyway, whatever they want us to correct, we corrected.
Yeah.
So we just kind of, I think and maybe a concise answer would be just diligence and hard work, and willing to like take the time to figure it out. And then knowing when there is no concrete answer and you just kind of have to move forward and
take an educated guess.
Yes.
Take a risk.
Yeah. It's it's like, it's like taking the SATs.
Yeah.
So yeah, we just kind of just did it. And also I think maybe this gets into just a little bit more like philosophy that I have. I don't mean this I say this with humility, but I just kind of like refuse to not figure it out. It's like, I'm going to figure this out. There's no other answer. So.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm the same way. And I feel like that's kind of a part of the drive that you have to be resilient and get it done. And, I think in entrepreneurship, there's some key characteristics that if you want to be successful, you just gotta embrace.
Yeah.
I think that's a key one.
Yep.
Well said.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's cool. Thank you. That's really nice of you. And same to you. I mean, you guys have built quite an awesome set of businesses as well.
Likewise.
It's cool. I think too, it's like my dad did his own thing for years, and I definitely had my judgments, especially as like a son. But then you get into it and you start to realize like how hard a lot of small business owners and entrepreneurs are working, and it also was just like, wow, I very quickly gained, not that I always respected people for their hard work, but you never really know till you experience it. And it definitely immediately made me be like, wow, this is incredible. Looking at like Philadelphia, when you see a small business opened by somebody from like another country and English is a second language, and you realize like they're doing it, it's like, wow, pardon my language, but it's pretty badass. And and you're like, and I think too, like just realizing, kind of starting to kind of look around at how many small businesses there are in Philadelphia and the surrounding area is like, that's like pretty inspiring, and also like if they can do it, then like we can do it,
Absolutely.
And just, yeah, it's like, it's a nice thing to go to bed at night and have that feeling that you figured it out, or you will.
Mm-hmm. And having that confidence, even though things are going up and down, that you have that core value within yourself that as things go up and down, as challenges arise, things go sideways, you have that innate confidence that you'll figure it out. Yeah. And I agree with you, whether there's challenges that people have with English as a second language, or barriers to entry, or societal pressures in a lot of different ways. So many people are doing so many hard things and not letting that get them down. That's tremendously inspiring and a lot to learn from.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah. I think that's probably like the thing that people miss the most, is just like how hard you have to work if you want to start your own thing.
Yeah. The number one question I'm asked is, how do I do all the things I do? So I put this into a course, a workbook, and a workshop where you can find all the little details about how I do this on a daily basis. And I've called it the Wild Ambition Lifestyle Design Course, Workbook, and Workshop. Transform your dreams into reality with guided vision setting, storyboarding, journaling, and all the tools I use to bring my dreams to life, with over 100 lessons, 200 plus pages of workbooks, and lifetime access so you can return to it whenever you need to. The course itself is that iterative process of how we continue to evolve over time to be the best version of ourselves. If you are an ambitious individual, if you want to make your dreams come true, I think you'll really love Wild Ambition, and I encourage you to check it out in the show notes. Start your journey today. Enroll now to dream and live with wild ambition. And when you were talking about your relationship and with your partners and your areas of expertise and how you kind of divide the work amongst yourselves and collaborate too, can you share a little bit more about each of your roles and how you define things between yourselves?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that like obviously it's more defined now than it was when we started. I mean, clearly. I think that we kind of in the beginning, Seth and I both had the fortune of having like led large teams and built things from the ground up, which was great. It's always different when it's somebody else's money or somebody else is handling the things that you don't see.
Sure.
But we did have that experience, and we kind of, through learning, each other as well, is we kind of decided to do everything together in the beginning. Like, we're just gonna have to learn who's got what and all that. And fortunately for us, like, our strengths don't overlap a ton. So I think there wasn't, we had our points of contention for sure, like any relationship, but it never got to the point where it even really impacted the next day, let alone that day. We were able to work things out. And over time, I think what we've come to understand is that, like, Seth handles all of our Instagram and drives all the marketing. Like, he just has a good eye for it and understands it, and he's dedicated to it. And and he's also like willing to put in the time for that too. And it's not something like I'm good at, or I'm not on social media. So it's like, yeah, I'm kind of a Luddite, and Seth is very in tune. So he kind of like, so Seth heads up marketing and PR and all that stuff. He also does a lot more of like the menu creation and kind of the overarching components for the kitchens, because again, he's got a lot of experience there. Some of the minutia as well for opening. I think that when it came to like operational components, it's kind of naturally split along like the operational pieces that you need for, in this case, like a cafe to function, which, from something as simple as like how many plates do you need and cups and whatever. Like Seth had done all that, and he also was familiar with doing pro formas for business stuff. So like a lot of that stuff he's taken on. And then for me, a lot of mine has come into, I do like all the legal framework stuff, like working with you. And I do all of like the more like business operational pieces. Seth and I collaborate on, but I kind of drive more like the financial components, the HR components. I think I'm pretty good at like understanding like the structure needs to be put in place for people to succeed. Mm-hmm. And I kind of head up a lot of like the employee dynamics. But we cross over on everything. So like we don't make any big decisions without one another. We get, it's like we get each other's input. And over time, some of these things you realize like, okay, I don't need input on this. And mm-hmm. it's more efficient and easier as a business and as partners to just kind of proceed in certain ways. And some of this has been through conversation. Some of it's just been kind of realizing where strengths are. Mm-hmm. Through coffee, I kind of like have led the coffee component because it's just a huge passion of mine and something that I know a lot more. And then conversely, Seth led a lot of the alcohol components because I know we'll probably get into it, but we have a small winery. And then Will is very savvy as well with like operational, financial, legal kind of components. So when I hit a little bit of a roadblock or need to check myself, I usually call Will with those things, and he's a really valuable asset. But yeah, we still don't make any large decisions without each other. We do all the hiring together, but we do, break that up. But that's kind of like the general division of duties. And it's, I think just to be frank, is like some of it is clarity. Communication is wildly important in any relationship. We got lucky. Like we all really get along. Mm-hmm. Like we're friends. We can be friends and business partners, and we're very close, and like it just worked. Mm-hmm. And I think that I don't want to discount like just kind of a little bit of luck, like just the way that we are as people. Like it just kind of works because partnerships can be hard, really hard, especially in the way that we've been doing it and how fast we've been growing. And sometimes like it's a little bit of like, it sounds corny, but it's like, it just kind of like flows and happens. I mean, not through some without friction at times, but like in general, it's just, we kind of have like found our lanes and been fortunate that it has been as easy as it has been, I think. Mm-hmm. So.
Oh, that's incredible to hear.
Yeah, we got lucky.
Because it can be very challenging, both from personalities and goals diverging or viewpoints and everything.
Yeah, of course.
So when you have something that you're both collaborating in, how do you define responsibility for something so that it doesn't get falling by the wayside just because there's two people or more working on it?
I think the simple thing that we do is just like who's in charge of this. And Seth would probably say it's him, and I'd probably say it's me. It's like, but we probably both do it. The simple, like, I'm really big on clarity, like leading teams before. I just know one of the issues that would arise would always be like, oh, I didn't know I was supposed to do that. And so like, I'm really big on, wait, so you got this, right? Like you're leading this. And Seth as well is like very big on like, I'm taking this, I'm going to go to this point with it, and I'll check in with you at that point. So we just make it very clear. There's no walking away. And like one of us is like, wait, I think we're working. It's like, no, if I do anything, like Seth is leading it, and like I get the 2 bullet points and I'll do these 2 things. So we just clearly define, I guess, the role and the responsibility within the project.
So helpful. And I think even if someone has the business themselves and they have employees, it's the same thing.
Arguably more.
Yeah.
Because I would say, like, unless you have one of those like incredible employees, even that's not fair to do that to them.
Mm-hmm.
It's like no one's going to be as invested as you are.
Always.
And so you better let them know, especially when you're like an owner and an operator and you're in there next to people. Like I think it's easy for people to assume that you'll probably do something, or maybe you want to, or they don't, so you got to make it clear.
Sure.
It's also respectful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of the people that grow the quickest in my businesses are the people who take ownership and act like they're me. And I'm like, lovely.
Yeah. Oh, it's wonderful. It's fantastic when it happens.
Phenomenal. Yeah. You're hired. We're working together. Yeah. Grow the team, hire who you want.
Yep. Yeah.
I'm here to support you.
Yeah. Team members like that are invaluable.
Absolutely. Do you have any tips from both your background in HR and what you've learned through your own businesses in just cultivating successful teams and good people around you?
Yeah, I would love to say that after doing it for, I guess, the greater part of 12 years that I would be exceptional at it or no, but people are people and people are challenging, self included, and like, we all are constant works in progress. I would say though, a couple things maybe to go to like the hiring process. And this isn't always feasible given the situation, but like, I forget who said it, but I know it was in the schools, and maybe it was the group of us. It was me and my two partners, Dave and Sarah, but we kind of had this philosophy of it's either 100% yes or it's no. And interviewing is weird. You talk to somebody, maybe they shadow you, but like it's hard to know nuance of a human and their personalities and their work ethics, et cetera, and even just the way that they'll fit into your business. They might be wonderful and just not fit. That's hard to know, but like that's something that we try to employ is like whenever there's that, then it's no. Like, and at some points in the business, you don't have that luxury. I think as you grow, you get more of that luxury. But that's one piece I would say. I think another piece is like, and I try to do this, like we just promoted from within for the first kind of like managerial like role in the company of operations manager. And even though Gab has worked with us for 2.5 years, I think, which is long for our company, we still did a proper onboarding and like rolled it out and expectations. We have weekly meetings and check-ins, and like I try to be very clear. So culture is important to establish. I think with the school and the HR company, I definitely learned, and some of it's cheesy, like really cheesy, but the core value kind of concept and the mission statement. So we keep those concise, and I don't have them laid out as such, like this is our mission, and this because we have these individual entities and large. It's a little bit different. You could argue not, but I think that still providing the expectations and how we operate, like how do we work, like how do you treat customers, like what's the feel, what's the music feel like how do you dress, and then let people know what the expectations are. And also like, hey, if you don't like it, like that's totally fair. Like our cafes have their style, so like it just might not be the space for you. Interviews go both ways.
100%.
So, but I think like laying out culture, laying out expectations, providing the resources for people to be successful, like it's really unfair to get upset with someone when you realize that like your expectations are not meeting like the information you provided them. And it's easy to get upset with someone and think they should know better, but you don't know why someone does or doesn't do something. So like if you lay it out and you have to reinforce things, but yeah, I think that structure, I'm a big proponent of structure. Like limit your risks in the future as much as you can.
100%.
So yeah.
I feel the same way. And we're actually going to do a podcast episode all about what we're currently doing in our business, which is onboarding team members, as I mentioned. Yeah. And it's actually like a marathon for us because we do daily meetings, they do video trainings, we have their career pathway tracker that defines like what they're going to be working on in progression to train and onboard with the company and everything. And then we do monthly meetings. And then when somebody, like you said, is not performing the way you're thinking, my first question is, what did I not give them? What did I not do to support them? And first I ask myself what I'm doing wrong or what I could do better, really, truly. And I focus on that for 3 or 4 times. And then if it continues to be a sticking issue, then I'm okay. This is not a great situation, but you really got to look inward first. And take responsibility, whether you're a senior manager or you have someone working under you or you're an entrepreneur. It's the same across the board.
And it's easy to just point the finger. It's easier. It's really easy.
And it's painful, and it feels challenging to take that ownership yourself for that challenge or that situation.
And then I think, to your point, after the whatever time you deem appropriate, it's like you then have to make a decision too, right? You have to have a tough conversation, and like, they suck.
They really do.
Like, if you have any bit of empathy or sympathy for someone, like, it's tough, it's hard, but you do look back, like the biggest lessons that I learned were like when people that I respected sat down with me and told me like what I wasn't doing or doing incorrectly or how I was acting. And it was like, I didn't forget those things, and like ultimately appreciated them. And I think you have to be respectful in return and to deliver it with respect, and always be willing to ask, of course, through the process, it's like, why are you doing this? And like, let's talk about it. Because other people have good reason. But yeah, I think that too is like, that's something that I'm really holding myself accountable to now as we grow, is being as clear as possible and jumping on issues sooner and just with the intention of like for the better, right? But not letting things simmer. And I know this, but like I admittedly have, there's times where you look back and it's like, oh, we should have tackled that a lot sooner, because it never resolves itself. And it's not fair to anyone. So.
No, it makes it harder for you, harder for them, and overall harder for the business and the rest of the team.
How long is your onboarding process?
So we have an intensive week of basically the entire week is onboarding. And so we have like a daily team meetings for 3 days, overarching our culture, going over key processes and systems in our business. We use Asana for project management, Slack for communication, Google Drive for all of our knowledge and document management, and 1Password for security and everything like that. So we kind of get them used to all of our systems and processes, start to give them like a couple tasks, like everybody checks in daily on Slack and checks out daily on Slack. So just giving them little tasks, do your timesheets, all those nuanced things. And then on Wednesday of the week, we start their one-on-one trainings of what's your role, what are your key functions, how to be successful in your role, and overall just task training. We sprinkle task training throughout our onboarding. So like it's a 10 to 15 step process, but just simple things like getting them to log into our Google, because you're not going to be able to access anything. So we literally take them step by step through, and then say how to set up your day, how to be successful, all that. And then that's kind of like the training is really focused on week 1. And then by Thursday or Friday, they start to get their first assignments. And then we show them their progression of skills for the first month or so to 2 months of their role in the company, and define those and who they're managing and who they're reporting to and all that kind of stuff, and establish meetings and whatnot. And then they kind of start rolling out, really focusing on work in week 2. But we're, like you said, really focused on high touch in the first couple months of their role with us, because we find that helps reduce friction in a lot of ways, because it's really hard to get someone good to get into your systems and processes if they don't adopt them early.
Yes. It's like bad form. Bad fundamentals. I think that's one thing. That's cool that you guys approach it like that. It's very smart. That's one thing that it's interesting, because like, with like previously, the school's a little less so, because there was a lot of like fires, a lot of like in the moment issues. But it's because like Seth and I, less so now, but in the beginning we were working all the time, and there was definitely times where we just didn't have the time to give to people. So we had to like give some leeway as well and understand that it was just like, since we opened up our second spot, it was like, how do you work 5 to 7 shifts and train someone properly and hold them accountable and be reasonable in the process? And I think that now, like promoting, as I mentioned earlier, Gab, we're still building out that company structure, which is, I think, quite fun. But we're like this has been a huge step for us to like, Gab's a very good trainer in terms of like bar, like coffee and knows what they're doing and is really good at it and is also a very talented barista. But like, it's cool to be able to do that. And then I'm able to come back in on the back end and like support those nuances and follow up with people. And I feel much better about how we're doing it now because, in the office setting, not that you're not busy, but you know that no one's going to interrupt you most likely. And in the cafe, you're like,
all day,
it's just
day,
everybody's
people
coming in.
Yes.
So that was a different world for me. There's no such thing as like a meeting. And then also like, minus, one human, like everyone's hourly. So you can't, also we didn't have much money. So you can't like have people late at night and you also can't expect them. It's just, so it was an interesting navigating all of that. And I think that growth has it's either like you're there all the time and you do a small shop and it's just who you are and what you do. But we have 2 main owners and Will's smaller, but like, so Seth and I were relying on us for income as opposed to one person, but which I think is still beneficial. But yeah, that's been an interesting thing to navigate. And we're getting better at it. Some of it's just time.
It's an evolution. Yeah. And this is me 5 years in.
Right. You weren't doing this
I was not
one.
doing this year one.
Right,
and I had like totally different, I had no systems and processes. We have standard operating procedures now, video tutorials, all that kind of stuff.
SOPs.
Love SOPs. I geek out on that stuff.
I do too, actually. It's really beneficial for people.
It is.
As corny as sometimes you're in another position when you work for someone else and you're like, this is annoying. But then you look back and like, actually, it was really wonderful that they took the time to do this.
Yeah. And we spent a lot of time developing training materials and SOPs. But honestly, the amount that I can reduce time on me to answer questions that we've done before. Like if I'm asked a question twice, I'm like, we need an SOP. We need a training. We need something.
Yeah. And then you have it.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
You can reference it.
Yeah. So I try to take as much as I can to support others and do it once. And yeah, it might take more time to do it once, but I usually also assign the person who I'm training the task of creating the SOP so that it's not as time sensitive on me.
Self-educating as well.
Yeah.
I think I always looked at it like structure and processes and that nature, SOPs, whatever you want to call the piece is like, it's kind of like, learn this because I don't want you putting your bandwidth into this. I want you to like build that for you so that you can utilize your brain power for the other more important things that are going to drive the success, whether it's internal or for the business, wherever it may be.
100%. And I think too, for businesses that have higher attrition or higher turnover in HR, it's super important to make it as minimally disruptive as possible while also maintaining that same level of consistency of quality across the brand. And that's kind of what was really getting me, was just, I have multiple different businesses. People stay for different amounts of time, and I don't have the capacity to jump back in every single time that someone offboards and take everything back up again. I need to be able to transition things easily between people.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. Make your life easier.
100%. One of my favorite places on earth is Ethereal Farms in the rolling hills and draping forests of Chester County wine country. It's right next door to our sister farm, Wayvine Winery and Vineyard, so guests of our luxury accommodations can enjoy wine visits, enjoy live music and food trucks at the winery. Our luxury accommodations and tranquil landscapes provide the perfect escape from the hustle and bustle of everyday life. There's also access to over 1,000 acres of hiking. Enjoy serene walks among meadows, cozy nights by the fire making s'mores, and unforgettable moments with our friendly farm animals. Everything from horses to goats, mini donkeys, which are the absolute cutest, ducks, chickens, turkeys, we've got it all. So if you're looking for a getaway with your friends, family, significant other, be sure to check out Ethereal Farms. Follow us on social media at Ethereal Farms to get all the cute farm content, and be sure to book your stay so you can enjoy a little bit of the magic here in Chester County. So speaking about culture and creativity, you guys have defined, I think, almost three things: culture, community, and creativity so well in your businesses. I feel like that's the hallmark of what you guys have put together.
That's nice to hear. So Seth and I and Will, when we were starting, to be a nerd about it, but like the third wave of coffee was like the pretentious barista, and especially in Philly, like the dismissiveness and, whatever. We're like, we don't want that. Like that is, so Seth, in his terminology was like, we need to bring hospitality into these cafes. And for me, it was like, we need to bring culture into these cafes, which ultimately is kind of saying the same thing in its own right, and how you're projecting your own culture. So we just made it really clear that like we were going to connect with people and make people feel welcome. And we're only going to hire people that made people feel welcomed. And if they weren't, then we're going to address it with them and help them improve, or, whatever. So the culture is huge. And I think you can have the best product in the world. Like if you, in a face-to-face business, if you're not nice, you better be in a high foot traffic area, or you're going to die. Yeah. You can get by in Philly in a high foot traffic area, which there's not that many of them, and be transactional in a very few spots. But like we're mostly in neighborhoods, and we would die completely. I do think we have a great product. I'm very proud of it, and I think that goes. And that's part of our culture, is the quality of the product. It's like the care in which the employees like care about the product and what they're learning, and the coffee, et cetera. Is like, you got to want to learn, and you got to want to be able to produce really good drinks, and you got to be passionate about it. And then like, but we also kind of just told people too, it's like, you got to be cool to people. Like we're going to, we are a little austere in our design, and we've softened it over the years. Like my wife did our original brandy package, and Seth and I didn't have any money. So Seth came up with this idea, this like this tonal split, because we didn't have money to do much more. We're like, that's cool. And then over a year and a half, we're like, okay, we need more. We need art and things of this nature, because what once felt maybe like, call it Nordic or whatever, clean, minimalist, started to feel like austere and cold. So we've added warmth to the spaces, and mainly through art. But the way that we got that originally was through the personality of the team. And like when everybody walks in the door, like I've made a lot of friends through the cafe, and a lot of our team members, baristas, et cetera, have also done the same. And like we have really good relationships with our customers and guests. So I think the culture there is like, it's vitally important. We have what could be like a product that could put you off, but we choose to do it through like, this is cool and exciting, and look at this, and like, I'll start kind of going down that rabbit hole, but like all the different processes and how you can share it. And also, from as simple as like when we picked our house coffee, we picked one that we knew that anybody would like. It's like, how can we, like a coffee nerd can be like, oh, I see what you're doing. And somebody who just is used to Starbucks can be like, oh, this is really good. You're like, yeah, it is, And we've had people say like, can I put milk in this? We're like, yeah, do it. It's your coffee, man. You do whatever you want. So I think we've done a good job of doing specialty coffee or artisanal, whatever term you want to use, like all the way down to like, you like a latte with like a lot of flavor and sugar in it. And like, we'll design a really cool one for you and do that. But hiring really good people and making sure that a kindness, to go back to like, mission, operating, like kindness, quality, and efficiency, and cleanliness are kind of like the four things that we always drill in. So yeah, that's really important. Culture, creativity. Fortunately, I think that Seth and I, like, we share different forms of creativity. But I think that we are, which is weird for me to say. My wife is very creative. She works in a creative sphere. So like I said, she helped us do the branding. And then we've networked a ton with just a lot of like, Philly has a ton of just like really cool creative people doing cool different small business things. So the community is there for sharing. But yeah, I guess it's like, when when you don't have much, like you've got to do something without much. So you better be creative to figure it out. And we've continued to do that through, I think, the networking and the relationships that we've built with people in the city. That's something that I don't think most cafes do. They might do some events and stuff, but like we like networked, like from people who run really big companies to like someone doing something really cool with pottery on the side. Like we took everyone serious and take everyone really seriously and like built a large community through that. And I think that and then just knowing that like, I mean, there's a business side of it. Without a community and a coffee shop in a neighborhood, you're going to die. But also it's more fulfilling. Like,
absolutely. More fun.
It's way more fun.
Yeah.
I know sometimes like it's almost hard to go out in the neighborhood because like you know so many people, but everyone's so nice. Like it is actually the side piece of all of this that I didn't realize was going to happen, was that like I was going to become very fulfilled as a human through this, outside of just like I love the business and I love the work, but like I've met so many cool people. So yeah, we were able to really capture all those, and we still hold it like dearly important, and we found that a lot of that community is 1000% gotten us this like next big project that we're into and everything else. So yeah, it's like vitally important, but it's also, I don't know. I think that's why I wanted to get into hospitality. My brother was and is in it. Is for me, like that's what I had a small community in the HR firm, obviously at the school, but it's different. But I was lacking, I wanted to engage with people that I didn't know about their lives and like their professions, etc. So like I've met so many cool people that are so different than me, so.
How have you approached networking intentionally?
Yeah, relentlessly.
Amazing.
I keep referencing my wife, but like she was a big proponent of doing this because I definitely, not as much now, but in the beginning have like a big mentality of just like you got to figure it out and do it on your own and like don't bother people and just kind of like work hard and do it. And she always encouraged me to kind of broaden my mindset about people who have done it. And Seth, one of his gifts and talents, I think, is his ability to like connect people and do events and maintain relationships. He's like a master at social media and that. And then he and I both, I think, over time realized that like we always knew that we wanted to do more, and you figure out along the way through plans and through life about maybe where that direction is, but just realizing that we needed to reach out to people and say like, can we talk? From someone who's like doing what we're doing to someone who's doing it better than we're doing it to someone who's like run successful businesses on a much different level. We just started like asking people to talk, and we also just kind of like, there's a business game, right? It's just like learning about how developers work, like how does the money work, like what's important to them, like financing, like what are their hindrances for all those kinds of things, like how's the money move internally in a project and line items, etc. So like you don't learn that without talking to people who do it. So we would, like anytime anybody was like, hey, we have a space, do you want to come see it and talk? We just said yes. We're at the point now where we say no, but for years we said yes to everything. We just went to every space, every person, talked to them, like, and you start to just figure out, and also like, getting over your own nervousness or self-insecurities about like, is this appropriate to ask? Like I started just being like very direct and very blunt in meetings, and respectfully always.
Of course.
But like, this is what we can do, and like, just pushing back and learning how to say no, or this isn't good for us. And the amount that we learned was like, I think sometimes people kind of, they ask us like, oh, you guys must be rich or something like that, and we're not. But we took the route of like self-education through those who have done it to figure out how to do it. Because I just turned 40 this past year, and
happy birthday.
Thanks. Coming up in February, 41.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Almost. A couple weeks away.
Almost there. Can't come fast enough. But I feel very young, so I don't mean it in this regard. But like, I don't want to wait till I'm 55 it's like, if we're going to do this, like I want to do it now while I have a ton of energy and I'm younger, and like really give it our all. and to grow quickly but smartly. And yeah, without an investor, which we still don't want, like we're not going to do that without figuring it out. So
yeah. And also those conversations for those spaces that you find out you love or find out aren't the right fit, those all prepare you to be a better candidate for the ones that are a home run that you really want to make happen.
Agreed completely. Yeah, you don't know until you don't know like what's not good for you, right? It's like, yeah. And that's only experience.
Absolutely.
Well said, yes.
How have your travels, because you said you spent a few years abroad, how have your travels influenced your business, your culture, your vision?
I got married, probably is like the biggest thing that's like influenced my life, which was not intentional, obviously. But like I did meet my wife through traveling, which has been wonderful. She's a huge influence on me. But I think in terms of like the business and all that, I mean, yeah, in my late 20s, I moved to Argentina and found work while I was there and lived there for about a year and a half and came home for a little bit and then went back and then backpacked up to Colombia and lived in Colombia for a while and worked as well. And I think just like, I mean, being uncomfortable and not knowing what is normal for others and stuff, I think is a good place to be in life, you know, and it gives you just a lot of, it just opens up your mind, like the obvious, but also just respect and seeing how people do things differently, and then learning how languages influences culture and like how it influences thought processes and the way that people operate and perceptions, etc. I think is invaluable. And I mean, I think it helped me a lot too, just like learn to open up as a person a bit more. I remember coming home after 2 years and, you know, you're just kind of like alone and because everything's normal and everyone goes about their life and you're just like, oh, this thing that I thought was going to be this, I usually was younger and, you know, you build up this, something's going to like culminate in this kind of thing, but it's just life. It's just another, like, in this case, very wonderful experience, but like, it's just life and it just keeps going. Hopefully, if you're fortunate enough, you know, and you get home and everyone's just like, hey, welcome back. And I'm going to work tomorrow, you know? And I remember just kind of being like, oh God, like, yeah, okay. Nothing like
this is kind of anticlimactic.
It is anticlimactic. It was wildly anticlimactic. And, which I think was very humbling. And I think what it taught me though is like, oh, you can stop and start life again in different ways and open up new chapters and kind of, it's scary. But I remember like people saying like, how'd you know, like what I did wasn't special, but like it was special for me. But it, you know, I remember people being like, oh, how'd you do it? And it's just like, I quit my job and bought a ticket. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of mental hoops and maybe you have to wrap up some other stuff if you're fortunate enough to be able to do it. Right. But like, that's what I saved up my money. I worked really hard. I saved my money for a year and like I went and I did it. And then I worked while I was there. And it's kind of the same thing with a business. It was just like this whole thing. And then one day it was so daunting and they were like, oh, I'm just going to quit. Like, that's what I have to quit my job. And fortunately, again, like be stable enough. My wife works. I'm not disregarding those kinds of things. Of course, like there's a plan in place, but I think it taught me a lot about that like I can live a different life and I can start over and do something new. And that's probably the greatest experience that I'm going to have and like the most self-growth that I'll experience. And then, you know, you still bring things like the music, the art, the language, like the one Forin is, you know, there's a lot of Spanish speaking folks around and then, you know, a lot of Spanish speaking folks work in hospitality and like, you know, I can like do an interview in Spanish and we can like joke around, or I've been able to help people in the neighborhood that were looking for certain things and whatever. And so that's like, I find like the joys of it still pull through in the business level in those small ways, which are just like really cool. But yeah, I think it's just that primarily that like life keeps going and that, you know, that the new chapters and like the trying something brand new that is, to be corny, but that's foreign to you, which is kind of the essence of why we stuck with that name. It's like that new experience is where you gain the most.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think while having something be anticlimactic is shocking,
Yeah.
it's actually a really good life lesson.
It's a very good lesson.
Because there's so much in business that you work and work and work. And then it's anticlimactic, and it just goes to show you how important that journey is, and how if you're not enjoying the journey along the way, don't be waiting for the party and the celebration at the end, because
it's usually pretty lame.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think it's also in a very weird way reassuring, because also if you go and do this crazy thing and just go off on a tangent in life, and then you come back, if that tangent wasn't, let's say, as incredible as you hoped it would be, it's actually really easy to jump back into life. It's actually really easy to just, whether you call it start over or restart or redirect, like however you frame it in your mind, I think people build those changes, those life changes up in their mind, even as small as style or how they present themselves with elegance or eloquence or whatever, their dictation and how they talk or how they speak. The smallest things people really overanalyze making change in.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I've learned through business that you can make wild changes, and you can start something or stop something, and life will go on. And you can just decide also to go back to what you were doing before if you don't like it.
Yeah, it's funny how that you kind of need to do it, or I don't know exactly what it is. I guess it's like time. Some people like learn it younger or whatever, but maybe a lack. I don't know. For me, I don't know. It's like I don't think it was ego, but yeah, maybe like more like insecurities and just fear. Just fear of the unknown. It's like it's funny when all those like cliche terms like enjoy the journey, blah, blah, blah. You're like, oh, they actually are. There's a reason they post them everywhere. It's because they're true.
They are true.
Yeah,
a lot of them at least.
Yeah, no, but I agree with you entirely though. Is like, again, like it's like, as long as you have the means to do it, or you've set yourself up, or, it's not like, some people like, I know it can be tougher, right? So you got to feed a kid, and your jobs, you don't have, it's like you're more week to week or whatever the case may be. Like that's a lot tougher, of course, but if you're in a situation where you can, like, it can be, you're probably going to be fine. And I always remind myself too, it's like, there's people doing a lot harder work than I am. And it's like, if this, like my wife and I talked about it, right? It's like, if this fails, I can get another job. And if I have to like go stock shelves or get a job in construction or whatever, like I can, like if I got to pay my bills, like I'll figure out how to pay my bills. Like, I still sweep the floors in the cafes and do all the, it's just like, you do what you got to do, and so, but yeah, there's always a way if you want to be.
If you want, for sure. Did you adventure in coffee while you were down in South America?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So the last spot that I was at, and then my wife and I met through mutual friends that actually my wife used to study in Argentina at the University of Buenos Aires, and like I was living in BA, and her roommate, I knew her roommate, and then when I was in Colombia, her roommate introduced us. That's how I met her. And then there's like a zone where there's like 3 small cities. So she and I went down to one's called Manizales, and like huge coffee region. And we got to like walk through the farms and all this. This was before we started the business. So I was just like, oh, this is so cool, and then I've been in some farms in Costa Rica, and also just, it's even as well as kind of going down. And I think that Colombia specifically, I'll speak towards that. It's where I spent most of my time the last decade, but like, it's been really cool to watch the progression. Originally going down, all of their good coffee was getting exported, or farmers weren't there's a lot of nuance to the dynamic, but like, in short, they weren't like, the good coffee wasn't being prioritized very minimally because of the consumption primarily in the US. And then also like farmers weren't being paid appropriately to like grow the kinds of beans it is more risky, and it's it's not as cost effective, et cetera. And then funny enough to see though, going to cafe culture where, that was shown directly in like Medellin, where my family's from, my wife's family, like, the coffee wasn't as good, but then you've watched over the past, also good is relative, right? But like, But then you've watched a very entrepreneurial city, and it's been cool to watch the progression of younger paisas, like where they're from, taking essentially like keeping the good beans in country. And there's been some really like awesome like surge of locally owned cafes that are doing like amazing work.
Wow.
And you're seeing that too, like in Mexico and different areas, that a lot of this is happening. And I think it's cool because when you have more specialty coffee in the US, you have more roasters who are going down and establishing direct relationships with farmers, which is kind of the key. And then they're investing in one another. They're not allowing, it's a bad word to use. They're supporting them in being experimental. Because sometimes like there's a lot of fermentation now in coffee and like anaerobic processes, and they're co-fermenting with different fruits and things of this nature. So like you can get rot and spoilage real quick. There's a lot of science involved. And just fermenting, you know wine. If you ferment it wrong, or you get the wrong bacteria in there, you can spoil your whole batch, and you can ruin a lot of money. And so they're also supporting these farmers and being able to take some of these lots and be experimental and do these like cool things. And I'm sure there's a lot that I don't know about it, but I do credit it a lot to, I don't mean it like the US is responsible, but the relationships that are being established without intermediaries and more corporate conglomerates is helping facilitate like a better relationship and higher pay. So you're also seeing farmers doing cooler things.
Oh, that's amazing.
It's pretty cool. I think like...
And more ethically too.
For sure.
Ethical, sustainable sourcing is 100%. So important.
And also, to be fair, like coffee farms it's like incredibly hard work. They're handpicking every bean. Like it's insanely hard work. So coffee should be more, I don't want to be on tape saying this, but it's the truth. Like it should be more expensive for the amount of labor that goes into it. But to be able to like help, like you said, sustain that and to pay better rates for them, and for me on the far end of it, to be able to like provide a cup where someone's willing to be able to pay more because you can explain that process and the hands that touch it, and it's like, it is, to me it's very similar to wine. It's like fine wines is really, really cool. It's like you can get to show hey, yes, like paying $7 for this one cup. We have obviously affordable stuff as well, and like normal coffee, but like paying $7 for this or $5 for this espresso is very much worth it. Like what you're going to experience is like really cool. It's like really special. So
it's part of heritage and culture, transcending global, lines and everything.
Yeah,
which is really cool experience that we're able to share with the world, and that you guys are able to share with the world.
Yeah, it's really fun.
When I was starting my business, I needed a place to create, a place that filled me from the inside out, somewhere that inspired me, helped me make content, a place where I could go to get good work done and host events, gather in community, celebrate one another, host family and friends for gatherings. So I created Flourish Co-working Space in Westchester, Pennsylvania. It's a space that nourishes you from the inside out. It's lush, inspiring environment with hundreds of plants to make you feel like your best self so that you can do your best work, and gather in community in a way that's casual, inviting, and just incredible. I hope you check it out. If you need a co-working or event space in Westchester, PA, be sure to visit us and book your co-working or event today. Check us out through the link in the show notes. So you touched on wine, and can you, for anybody who's not familiar, give a little bit of a breakdown of Whim, Percy, Forin, the wine, all that?
So we started off with one location, obviously. Maybe not obviously. We started with one cafe in East Kensington in Philadelphia, Forin Cafe. About a year or so later, we opened up our second one, oddly enough, not too far away from that one. And then this past May, we acquired Whim Cafe on South Street, and we've been waiting because we had like 3 days to turn that around and take it over.
Wow, that's quick.
It was a long few nights, and a very quick time to be able to process all the paperwork. We had like 5 weeks, so it was a bit of a crash course. I took very diligent notes that time around. And so we're actually switching that over to Forin come February 3rd, which you've been helping me with. Thank you very much. Make my life a lot easier. But we're going to switch it over to Forin. And then in the midst of all of that, we started a small winery that we were doing in, like, technically, I guess, like Old Kensington is what they would call the neighborhood, like North Fifth Street up by Human Robot Brewery. We were close to them. My brother was making mead for a long time on his own, so we kind of came together. He was making wine for us and like mead, honey-based wines, and then he started doing fruit wines, so like just non-grape. And he's opening a bar up in Baltimore, which is exciting. So he kind of handed it off to me. So he started teaching me at the end, and I'm going to take it more in the fruit wine direction. I'm more interested in that. Maybe like one of the honey wines though, because they have their place and they can be really cool and they're fun to mix. So we started making fruit wines as well, and we did a rebrand with those. We're calling that Rhythm. I'm going to be moving production to one of our cafes soon, and so with that, we've been able to have an alcohol program, right? In PA, as you well know, you can then serve alcohol, spirits, beer, etc., made in the state of Pennsylvania, which has been a really cool way to meet. Seth knew James, but like been able to meet the guys at Wayvine, and we've met so many like vineyards and breweries and people doing spirits. Like it's really just cool because all these people are passionate and doing all these awesome things, especially like in the state is really cool, let alone Columbia or whatever. It's also cool to see it at home. Like I'm from PA, so it's pretty special. Yeah. And so then to try to reel myself back in, so we've got those three, and with that, we're allowed to actually have an alcohol program because our liquor licenses are in Philly, up to the tune of roughly $200K all in. So that's a lot of money if you don't have it. And so then Percy, this new endeavor, is a full bar and restaurant in the Fishtown area. It's right around the corner from like LMNO and Kalea, Mulherron's on the other side. So yeah, we're going to be doing. So speaking earlier of networking, there was a lot of connections from like Will. It used to work. The company's called Irby, large scale developer. Will used to work with them, and then we knew various people, and they were looking for a bigger partner, which is like fully understandable because this space is 4,000 square feet, and we currently operate 3 cafes, a very different business. But things were kind of just kept going, and these people kind of kept referencing us along the way. And saying, you should talk to these guys, and eventually they did come talk to us. And it turns out that one of the partners in this is from Philadelphia, and he's one of the guys that we had reached out to a couple of years ago to like sit down with and get his advice and talk to him and ask him. And we didn't know this because he actually had called me up then, like cold called me at one point, was like, hey, you know that I'm doing that? I was like, I heard your name, but I didn't know your role. Because we also like, we're not one to ask for favors. Mm-hmm. Like we're proud of what we do and we work hard and like we think that we're doing the right thing and we try to. And if it's going to come along, it's going to come along, but we're not one to like ask for gimmies. Mm-hmm. But it turned out that he had a big say, a massive say in this project. By massive, I mean like half of ownership kind of say. And he's like, oh, I actually know those guys. And he's like, yeah, this is a big jump, but he's like, like they can do it. And I support that. And he's been incredibly supportive. And thanks to a lot of other people that also, like a couple people in New York pointed them our way and stuff like that, because of relationships we made outside the city. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so we're able to take over a 4,000 square foot space that has a full kitchen and a dining room and a full bar and then a lounge area that we're going to do. So we're going to do 7 days a week AM program. And then a big focus on brunch on the weekends, Friday through Sunday, obviously. And then Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights, full dinner service and a lounge area that has like a fireplace with like really comfortable furniture that we'll do some music in, etc.
So cool.
Yeah, and our chef is amazing. He's coming from A Kitchen in Rittenhouse, from High Street Hospitality, who's fantastic. Like Ellen and her team are absolutely wonderful. And the chef Eli, the exec chef at A Kitchen, is insanely talented. Jack was his number 2. And Jack was looking to do his own thing, and we knew Jack, and it worked out really well. So he's going to be running the kitchen, which is incredible because he's insanely talented. So the food that Jack will be doing is New American, and his backgrounds are in French, Spanish, and Thai cuisine. So he'll influence those in there, and he's just really good. I mean, A Kitchen's wonderful, and like Jack was kind of de facto there, and so a food program is going to be awesome. I'm going to eat better than I probably ever have. And coffee, I'm confident in, and Seth's background in bars and restaurants has been cool, and we've been diving even further in and going out west too for some of like the whiskeys and stuff like that. So we're building a pretty cool bar program for PA specific. Yeah, I'm really excited. And then like all the networking we've done with the music world, like we've networked a lot like within like the DJ and the jazz community. So we'll bring those guys in. And the space is, Irby's been wonderful to work with, like massive company, really good people. They've been wonderful to us. And the design group is Sean Houseman Design. He did in Philly, he did Park, Butcher and Singer, and Dandelion. So like this place is like an Austrian 1940s style kind of influence. It's unbelievable. It's insanely beautiful.
Well, I can't wait to visit.
Me too. It's like it's still a little dusty, but no, you're obviously more than welcome. Please come.
For sure. James and I are going to do it.
It's crazy.
We talked about this. And I was like, we need to eat at the cafes. We need to get some coffee.
We'll hook you up. Come on through.
Sure. We want to come and support you guys.
Yeah. That'd be great. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, it's been really wonderful to be a part of the team, bringing it together and everything. And I'm very excited for all that you guys have built.
Thank you. Thanks for helping us and being a part of it. It's very appreciated. You're easy to work with, and and very helpful. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Can you share more about the vision that you have with fruit wine? I think that's so unique, and honey and fruit and everything like that. Such a unique taste.
Yeah. Thanks for asking about that. I'm excited because I think it's the part where like one of the reasons I wanted to get into my own business and coffee is like my dad, as I mentioned, is a carpenter. I used to work with him in like my younger years up into like my early 20s. I don't want to, I still want to use my hands. You know, it's like, it's easy to go too far, not too far. Everybody's path is different. For me, it's easy to go so far that I'm just at a desk again. And I'm like, what am I doing? So for me to be able to still be involved in coffee and the wine is a place where I can go and just like use my hands and like do something that's still connective. And for me, really important. And it's cool too, because my brother's the one who taught me. And I'm sure he's younger than me, so I'm sure he loved telling me what to do. But it's just cool. Like, you know, we source a lot from like Lancaster and surrounding areas and a couple things from Pacific Northwest. But it's been fun because like just having like more rudimentary equipment, like you kind of realize you're like, oh, I'm doing this. If you take out, you know, some of the sanitization chemicals, you're like, oh, I'm doing this like they did years and years ago. And I think one of the cool things about fruit, like I'll be the first to say like grape wine is superior. I mean, like you're not going to beat a beautiful French wine. Like it is what it is, right? Like, but I do think that fruit wines have a lot to offer.
They're really cool.
It is cool. And I think that my brother was really diligent and firm on like no adjuncts, like no additional flavorings, no syrups, no concentrations, like just the fruit. A little bit of like turbinado, like higher quality sugar for back sweetening. Maybe he has a sweeter palate than I do, but and then just like, you know, be smart about your yeast selection. You know very well about that. Just like can influence flavor components a lot, and then like, you know, it's been cool because I was able to talk like there's like this place Scott Laboratories out in California that like does all like wood and oak and stuff, and like they're just super cool to talk to. It's like this whole other world to learn about and to like just, you know, it's like it's wine, right? It's like they're still trying to figure out certain areas and terroirs and stuff. So like, especially with climate change and whatever, but like there's so much to learn, and to be able to do it with just like a fruit and something different, I think it's really fun, and I'm excited to grow in it. But I also like that people expect it to be like bad.
Do they?
I think from us, maybe.
It's delicious.
Well, thank you. That's cool. Maybe it's my own perspective. But like, I maybe not bad, maybe it's a bad word, but like I think that people, if we're gonna do it, I think that people have an expectation of us at our coffee shops that it'll at least be like good.
Yeah.
But like maybe like what I've understood is like people's experiences, like it's often like cloyingly sweet or maybe artificial, and like we try to treat it like a grape wine, and that's how we do it. So we did like a Marionberry, like they're only out of a certain part of Oregon. Like it's a cultivar from like of blackberries from the 60s. So like high potency, high antioxidant. Like we did one with black currants, but with the Marionberry kind of mimicking like a little bit of like a light Spanish red or like a Northern Italian red, like a little drier, like maybe a Spanish red, like a little juicier. And then like we did a peach wine that we aged on oak. We did a peach wine, but it tastes like a kind of like a steel tank white. It's like a little sweet, but not really. Like it's just kind of cool. So I'm excited to try more fruits. And my cousin, when I was a kid, used to make like dandelion wines, and like like he literally picked dandelions from his yard. I grew up in the country, and he would like pick like local peaches or apples, and he'd make different stuff. So or pears from the pear trees that we had and all that crap. But I'm excited to try it more. And I think too, it's fun because, you can serve them as is, and it's a really fun thing to talk about. And people are kind of surprised, like, oh, this is actually pretty good. Yeah. And I'm excited to grow in it. But yeah, and it's cool too. Like, Seth's really talented with mixing, and whoever we have runs the bar. So like doing spritzes or adding that into cocktails, right? It's like, you can do a lot of cool stuff with it. So and I think it's cool too. Like, I like the idea of like, I know like Wayvine grows, like the brothers have done, like family fields and planted and expanded and learned about the hills and stuff like that. So like to be able to work with people like that, but are doing it on like the orchard side of things, like, to be able to grab their fruit from Lancaster area or whatever, and to be able to make it into a wine is like, to me, it's just really cool.
Oh, it's so fun. Yeah. We did a cider. I don't know when we started that, maybe last year, the year before, and experimented with that, and they absolutely loved it. We started planting an orchard a couple years ago, but our deer population
did they eat it?
Us. So we're hoping that the orchard grows, but
they're picking all the fruit.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, they're all baby plants. For the orchard that we planted, we just got graftings and everything. So started out from scratch. So it's all just growing up, but more just the leaves they go after and everything. So we're hoping eventually we've got an orchard, and James has been geeking out on apple varieties.
Really? Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah.
That's really fun.
I think it's fun to innovate in the wine space and take risks and do something a bit different. And I think that especially the Philadelphia market loves it. Especially they love the creativity. They love something different. I think we've found at least that Philadelphia is not always looking for like the California Reds. They're wanting something eclectic and something new and different and something to talk about.
Yeah, Philly's really open. I agree. And like, I think too, one of the things that we learned about too is like, I mean, you have your certain markets who just want your California Red or your big French, of course, right? But like in general, especially like in a neighborhood like Tulip is in, like Possible Wine Bar, like the areas that we're in, you have a lot of people who it's like, is it good? And like, will you talk to me about it? And like, what's the story? And people will like listen and get excited with you. And I think too, one of the things that I love about Philadelphia, and that like, it's the same thing as the entrepreneurial community, like the small business community. Like people are really supportive of one another. There's not a lot of like trying to take over other people. It's just like, we can do this together. And I do think that like Philly is really good to its own, and Philly's really supportive of like, oh, you're from Philly and like you did this and you make this and oh, you make that close by. Like I'm going to support you. Which
I love. And I think that it's been taking the small grassroots and bringing it into big business, and you're starting to see Pennsylvania wines on big sommelier lists and beverage programs and everything, and I'm like, yes,
because it's actually good.
Yeah.
And I think that people
has to be there,
and people are learning that it actually is good.
And the community's rallying around it and getting it onto beverage programs that you didn't typically see before, which is really
even
neat.
5 years ago.
5 years ago. I think that there's been a tremendous change in that, which I'm all about.
And it's cool. I agree with you. And it's cool too. Like you see it, you go to some of these bigger restaurateurs in Philly that are maybe like, probably like Philly based more so, but you'll see Wayvine or Mural City or whomever on a wine list next to like some pretty big like
and $200
domestic
bottles of wine and
Yeah.
everything like that.
And it's cool too that like some of these bigger restaurants, I mean, you got to acknowledge, or whoever's doing the buying, whoever it is in the space, but is like, yeah, I want to support this too. And because they don't have to,
No.
but it shows you that they're involved as much as the community is, that because they're not going to do it if they're not moving it. Right. So it's working all ways. And to your point, like it's Philly's special like that. It's really cool.
It is really cool.
Yeah.
City Brotherly Love, I think that a lot of people, they discount that in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
And they also, I think, find Philadelphia to be a more abrasive city.
Mm-hmm.
And I, from my community interactions, have found it to be such an incredibly supportive community.
I think so.
Which I really love.
Philly's just kind of blunt.
Yeah, that's true.
But it's not. It is kind though.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's just not fake.
Yeah.
But they're authentic.
To say the least.
I love it though. I struggle when I go other parts in the U.S. and you're just like, oh man, you guys are you really nice to me or no?
Yeah.
Like Philly, you kind of know, but I do think that like the community in Philly and the willingness to support, whether it be like other small businesses or like I said, we reached out to like really big players and they were all like, sure.
Yeah.
Like maybe it didn't happen because schedules didn't align, but it wasn't for unresponsiveness, you know, and even other, like we do so many pop-ups at our cafes and like we've done chef residencies and like, I mean, who's coming to spend, you know, $80 prefix meal at a cafe at night? It's like Philadelphians, you know, and like that's really cool because like a couple people we know and friends of ours now open restaurants since, not because of us, right? But they were in our space and like they did a lot of work before us. So we don't deserve the credit in that regard, but like it's cool to just see how that can like generate in Philadelphia. We'll support that to where you can still, I hope it doesn't change too much, but like you can still not have too much and like open a business in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And there's enough people that'll say, coming back to our earlier talk about how no one tells you how to do it, there's enough people like that will just kind of be like, oh, here's what I did. Like, here you go.
Yeah.
Like, I'll do, like, you know, whatever. Like, people have helped us in that regard. Like, we've helped others in that regard. And it gets passed around a lot.
And that's part of the reason why I do the podcast. And part of the huge reason why I'm about to publish a book and have educational resources.
What's the book about?
About entrepreneurship through acquisition. Actually, what you do with WIP. Buying a small business and how to do it and all the legal aspects of it.
That's cool.
Yeah. And I'm a huge proponent of sharing what you know. And I think that's just giving it back to someone else and not expecting anything in return and just paying it forward in a lot of ways.
Agreed completely.
Yeah. If anybody's listening, the best way to make a small business owner's heart happy is to share about their brand, to say to all the big businesses in the area, you know, get Forin on the beverage list and share and make someone's day just by, it doesn't even have to cost anything, just a little bit of supporting a small business.
Yep. Any small businesses around you, you know, they're like, no one's getting rich and they're working really hard and they want you to come in. So support them. Yeah.
Whether it's a like or a comment or a share or telling a friend, writing a Google review, asking the beverage manager to get Forin on the list and everything, whatever it is, every little small bit. Say those New York people telling the companies down in Philadelphia who are looking for someone that you're a good business to do business with, like all of that is a tremendous help and is a great way to support local and support small business. Yeah. And then you said you were really involved in the entrepreneurial community as well in Philly. Is there groups that you like or just natural communication?
Yeah, the latter. Yeah, the latter. I'm not like I think they're cool, but I'm bad at like fixed group things. But it's similar to like asking those other folks, like we've just made really wonderful relationships with a lot of small business owners. And, you know, I think that the post-pandemic, like when we opened, we got kind of lucky in the sense of like, that was right when the mask mandate was lifted, but then it was put back on. So we got to like, everyone was excited. We kind of, you know, I think it's part of the reason why, it is one of the reasons why we got the space that we got, because that area was growing and it hit pause. So we just were like the good the receptionist of like good fortune and timing in that regard. But a lot of businesses failed because of the pandemic, which was horrible. But through crisis comes opportunity. And so like a lot of other people took off during that time. Like you mentioned to me, like your podcast during that and all that kind of stuff. So like a lot of people took that opportunity as like, well, like why not? And or people that had small businesses got money and were allowed to grow and expand through different, opportunities, which we didn't. We were too late. We didn't get any of that. But I know it was really good for a lot of people. But yeah, we just like went and talked to everyone. And I used to be, I'm a little shy right now because I'm on camera, but I used to be an insanely shy person. And I think being a part of the cafes has been like wonderful for me as a human. And I just feel so comfortable now going up and like just talking to other people and like people coming into cafes and just learning how to just have those smaller conversations. And I mean, maybe to my wife's chagrin, but like when we go to a bar, like I'm like the first one that I'll start talking to the bartender or the whatever, because I'm just interested. I just think it's cool. And I love all the people that work in hospitality. There's so many smart people doing like that and investing their time and energy into that, but also these other side projects. And like, so yeah, we just like talk to everyone, and Seth connects via Instagram, the other tool that I don't use, but like, and then we'll just meet or go patronize their business. And we've just done it organically. Yeah. Just for like a lot of time and inviting people in and taking care of them and going to their businesses, et cetera. But like, it's just been organic.
Yeah. It's a great way.
Yeah.
Are there any lessons that you've learned or tips that you can give to someone, whether they're interested in starting a small business or a cafe or, just take on a new challenge in the new year?
I mean, do it. Have a plan. Be smart. Don't get too excited about the shiny objects because it's easy. Like seeing real estate before you have a business plan is easy and it's fun, but there will always be opportunities. But I think something to be like in all seriousness, I'll speak towards hospitality, and I think starting your own business in general is like, you gotta want to do it or not, because it's going to take up like all your time. And then growing and learning how to balance that along the way is important, because you can work all day and all night, but you have to like have a life, right? It's important for burnout, for whatever, maybe your marriage or your friendships, whatever, or just like personal fulfillment. But I think having the goal of figuring out how you balance that as you go. But when you get started, you gotta kind of give it all you got. And it's going to take a little while, probably longer than some people assume. So yeah, just be willing to work really hard, unless you have money. Money can solve a lot of those problems. But then you've got to hire well, and you got to do, it's a different, it's a different,
burn through it, making mistakes.
It's easy to burn cash.
Yeah.
Real quick. Right. So yes. And I think another one thing though, that like, yeah, I wouldn't do it on my own, but like find the right partner, kind of cheesy things, like go with your gut. I think though that like, trying to be like really practical about this, being undercapitalized sucks. Not everyone has a luxury of, I was able to switch and like get like a different house and all that kind of stuff. Like if you're renting, like your payment's not changing. Like there's months where we pretty much made zero money. That was hard. So it's like being undercapitalized is tough, and we have dealt with that. I think we've been smart about it, but it has made it challenging in ways that it didn't have to be. But interest rates are high and stuff. So it's like, figure out your financing, and be cautious of being undercapitalized. Cause it can crumble really good businesses that actually could be successful, but it's hard when you don't have the capital.
Yeah. It's going to be bumps in the road. You got to be able to make them through.
Mm-hmm. Equipment breaks, or like somebody quit, it's just like all these, it just happens. Things just happen. They always happen. I think like, yeah. And so I think with that though, is like, there's that part of it where you just got to kind of like rip the cord and go for it. And there's also the counterbalance of like, set yourself up. Like, there's never the perfect time. Sometimes you get lucky, like rents are really low or whatever, interest, but people do it in the worst of times and the best of times. So like, figure out how to set yourself up for success. I mean, talk to people, like build the business, figure out your finances and your accounting, figure out your operational structures and all the things that we talked about earlier with hiring, and like, don't push away those kinds of things, because the foundation of your business is like, do your legal work. Like, don't start your business with somebody else without an operating agreement. Like, don't be an idiot. Like, you might get burned. We all say never me. Like, I would never burn my business partner. I'm sure Seth would say the same. And I feel that way deeply in my core. But we also don't have to worry about it because we have an operating agreement.
Yeah.
So we don't have, build your business soundly, because you see it. Like, we've had a couple friends who had wonderful businesses and didn't have the legal framework and had everything taken from them because of a landlord being grimy. So like, yeah, build a sound business. What are you going to say? I'm sorry, you're going to say something.
Yeah, I've unfortunately seen it a ton on the legal side, just people calling me after the fact and being like, hey, this is the situation I'm in. And I'm like, oh, that's painful.
Yeah.
It could have been easily avoided. And it's usually 10 times more expensive to fix an issue than it is to do it right the first time, which is really hard.
It is.
Yeah. When you're thinking of what you've learned or who you've learned from, whether it be books or podcasts or resources, are there any that stand out for you that you think would be valuable to share?
I'm kind of like I like to do things. It sounds so silly saying it out loud, but I like to do things. It's the best way that I learn. And then I like to talk to people who know better than me. Like, that's how I learn best. Like, school was actually unlike a lot of kids, like, school's a good format for me. Like, I learn well by listening and then doing, like, whether listening and writing a paper. Like, I learn well like that. Or I learn well by like I've taught myself a lot of the maintenance stuff by like watching a tech over their shoulder, asking questions, and then doing it with YouTube. Yeah. So like, I service most of our equipment now. So I guess I haven't been the kind of person who like reads a lot of books per se. And I read, but like, I read books, but like reading those type of books or those type of podcasts. But I am the first person to go to the coffee shops that I respect and like talk to those owners or talk to those baristas about what they're doing. Like, I want to know that. So like, those are my podcasts. Like, those are my videos, is the people. Or like, I listen to Guy Raz a lot, like How I Built This.
Oh yeah.
I do find that really stimulating and interesting. I like hearing people's journeys about highs. I don't desire to be like a CEO like that, but I think that that's fascinating. So I do listen to Guy Raz. And there's this one on YouTube, I'm blanking the name of it, but like, you can find anything on YouTube. Yeah. But it's like how to start a business. This guy does this stuff and he interviews coffee owners specifically, and he does it all over the place. But I would watch like the interviews with these guys about these people about like growing their coffee industries. Cause I'm like, cool, there's things directly correlated. But yeah, I spend a lot of time like talking to people and just asking all the questions. Yeah. Like all the time.
And we all learn in different ways. And I think there's a lot that I do too. My dad always taught me that if I ever have a technician working on anything for me, I'm always asking all the questions. And that's just how I was learning things. I don't plan to ever service my heater myself.
But
I watch. But I sit with them every time they do it, and I ask questions every time I do it, every time they do it, and then I know more than I did last time.
And you know the general operating structure of your heater.
Yeah.
Like how it functions. Yeah. Mm-hmm. What'd your dad do?
My dad's an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Real estate investor.
Cool.
He started with real estate. Like a brokerage. Yeah. And he created that on his own, and then started building from the brokerage. Got it up to like 30 people.
Cool.
And then started his own real estate firm.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But a lot of entrepreneurship. My mom's an accountant, and she has her own business too.
Has her own like accounting firm?
Yeah.
That's cool.
It's just her, and she's like kind of that like cafe just run by one person. She's never had anybody else with her.
Oh, really?
But she has like her great group of clients that she loves, and
That's awesome.
does it all and everything. And from both of them, we've just gleaned a lot of little tidbits.
It sounds like it. I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, advice: get a good accountant.
Yeah.
I mean, like, credit to your mom, but like, there's the first thing that we third partied, other than like, hey, can you please fix this, or can you please do the electrical work? Of course, right? But in terms of like the operating the business, the first thing that we could afford it that we third partied was our bookkeeping and our accounting, and I have zero regrets. And the people that we finally, much respect to those that we used, the folks that we're with now, they're like, they're invaluable. They're invaluable. Yeah, don't skimp on accounting.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more.
It's so important.
Yeah, and don't get caught not doing your bookkeeping all year, and then
don't do that.
Not paying your sales tax, and then not.
No,
All
it's a nightmare.
Things. Oh my
God. You
God.
think you got money and you don't.
Yeah. Pay it along the way.
Just pay it along the way.
A lot easier.
Yeah, we paid for like, because like we have daily like an immense amount of categorizing because of the nature of our business.
Yeah.
And we were originally categorizing in QuickBooks and doing all of that, and then realized that like, what a waste of time this is. Invaluable thing that needs to be done, but what a waste of our time this is. And someone's better at this than us. And yeah.
And it's really hard to get good at things in certain categories that you don't jive with, but that has to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so much better to spend your time on how are we going to scale and what's the vision of the business and how are we going to hire and execute and take care of our customers than how are we going to input these.
Well, it's like your heater analogy, right? It's like I want to know how it's done, but I know that there's going to be nuance that I don't understand because I'm not an accountant. I didn't go to school for it. But I also don't need to, right? But as long as I learn along the way and you're paying attention and asking questions, and get a good accountant.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with that more. Well, I just want to thank you so much for spending some time to share your journey, what you've been through, some things you've learned. It's been incredible hearing your story and also your vision and how you've brought it to life. I'm excited to see where you guys are going in the future.
Yeah. Thanks.
But I would love for you to share with everybody, how can they support you? How can they find you guys?
Oh, thanks.
And come in and support small business.
Thank you. It's really nice. I mean, Instagram's great, of course. It's at Forin PHL and Percy's at Percy PHL. But I mean, come visit us. Our cafes we have 2 Forins in East Kensington, which is essentially the neighborhood that abuts to Fishtown. And then our other one is on South Street. So between 2nd and 3rd, it's called Whim right now. In February, it'll be called Forin. The teams are awesome. Our baristas are awesome. And I think we did, they're cool spaces. There's something different, and you can try some really wonderful coffee and food. And then Percy's opening up in May. And then just I think as well is when you get the opportunity to not go to a chain and you can go to somebody small, like you should, because it means the world to them.
It really does. Yeah. And not only that, you're going to be in for a good treat because the food looks absolutely incredible. The breakfast sandwiches, the coffee looks really good. Yeah. I'm a tea gal. I can't wait to try some tea things.
There's some good stuff, yeah.
So you'll be in for a treat, and definitely go in person. Bunch of locations in Philadelphia. You can check it all online. We're going to include all of the links in the show notes, so it'll be easy to find. Thank you, Kyle, so much
for joining
us.
Appreciate it very much. Thank you.
It was so fun.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll see you on the next episode of the We Grow Together podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to share this on social media. Tag at Forin PHL. Tag at Flourish Westchester, so that we can have more people enjoy Forin, get to know more small businesses in the area. And of course, be sure to leave us a 5-star review. It means the world to us, a little thing that you can do to support small business. Thanks, everyone. See you in the next episode.